October 7th, 2017. A man going by the name of Christmas Kethwain would receive a call from an unknown number. After picking up the phone, it was determined that the Stellenbosch Hospital from Stellenbosch, South Africa, were the people calling him. He was unsure of what to expect. Surprisingly, on the other end, they asked him, "Is your brother home?" His brother being Tetetiki Gukotsi. This question would honestly start a series of the most unexplained and just quite frankly creepy events that I've ever read or watched any videos on. Today, we are going to be going over the mysterious case of Tetetiki Gukotsi and others similar to him. Tetetiki Gukotsi was a 61-year-old man, a father of 6, and a local of the Stellenbosch area. On October 5th, 2017, he was admitted for abdominal pain and subsequently had to get abdominal surgery at the local Stellenbosch hospital. What would unveil is something just completely unexplainable. Reportedly, around 5:30 a.m., the nurse attending to Tetetiki would have to exit his room for just a moment to change the linens. I have personally worked in an emergency room before. Let me tell you, changing linens takes 30 seconds to a minute max. Yet by the time the nurse came back to his room, he was gone, completely vanished. No evidence of a physical altercation, nothing around the room was strange, nothing was out of order, yet this man was gone. When you consider the fact that this is a 61-year-old, pretty elderly man who just had invasive abdominal surgery a couple hours prior, he's got anesthesia, he's got numbing agents still in his body, and obviously he just got cut open. How did he just simply disappear from this room within such a short time frame? This isn't the weirdest part though. 15 days later, on October 20th, construction workers were doing maintenance in the ceiling of the Stellenbosch Hospital. In a remote, isolated corner of the hospital, the deceased body of Tetetiki Gukotsi was found, curled up into a fetal position, dead in the ceiling of this hospital. Autopsy reported that he had not died from natural causes. Any complication, if there was, in the abdominal surgery was not the cause of his death. Now, what's strange about this is the hospital actually performed and got this autopsy done. What they reported to the family and what they reported about his body is very vague. They did not provide a specific cause of death. They provided very little information about his autopsy. Another thing that should be noted is that he was moved to the ceiling in that isolated area and placed into this curled up fetal position after he had passed away. Someone or something snatched Tetetiki from his hospital room within the short amount of time that his nurse was gone, killed him, moved him across the hospital without being noticed, got him into the ceiling, and placed his body in a fetal position. Now, obviously, this is a weird phenomenon. How does a elderly man just wind up in the ceiling of a hospital dead? But there were people with their speculations saying that it was the drugs he was administered, or he could have died and the hospital could have moved him there on accident, a bunch of different theories. That was until about 2 years later when something very similar to this incident happened. Friday, May 10th, 2019, a construction worker going by the name of Sandile Sabia breaks his femur. Obviously, after breaking his femur, he is transported to a hospital, that being Mahatma Gandhi Hospital in South Africa. As you can see on the screen, while these hospitals are on completely separate sides of South Africa, they're only a 2-hour flight, and we'll touch back on that in the future. Getting back to what I was saying, Sandile Sabia broke his femur. Around May 13th, just 3 days after he arrived at the hospital, he was cleared to go to a separate hospital and meet with an orthopedic surgeon to have his broken femur completely fixed in a very advanced surgery. When they were going to pick him up from his room, literally right before he was to be transported, he disappeared. Gone. He was vanished the day before he was going to be transported to have surgery on his broken femur. They would end up not finding him. A missing persons case was reported with the local police, and nothing happened. It is to be noted, though, that around Thursday of the next week, May 16th, a stench started spreading throughout the hospital. Different employees there anonymously recalled that it was gut-wrenchingly bad. A horrible stench spreading like wildfire throughout the hospital. Fast forward to May 24th, a worker would be cleaning out a storeroom when she would notice some mysterious fluid dripping from the ceiling. She also noticed that the stench was concentrated more than usual from this room. As a result, she would call security and the police would go. They would end up removing the ceiling tiles from this room, searching the ceiling, and finding the dead, decomposing body of Sandile Sabia curled up into the fetal position within the ceiling of this hospital room. That is just, I can't believe that. What's even weirder about this is that his cause of death was never identified. Although there was an autopsy done, no information was shared with the public. I just can't fathom why that is. It is to be noted that this hospital actually didn't have any sort of security plan in place at the time. Zero. They literally had no actual security plan for this hospital. All they did was just stick some probably minimum wage security guards around and just had them stand there. There were no protocol. There was no scheduled anything. Nothing. Now, to build off of this, what's even stranger about this Mahatma Gandhi hospital is that a little under 2 years prior, October of 2017, a 4-year-old girl would accompany her dad simply go into the hospital for a routine checkup in the emergency room, she would come across a mummified body wrapped in white plastic in a random equipment room. They just had a mummified body laying in some random equipment room decomposing. Yeah, I'm just as confused as you are right now. So, those are really the main two instances of this, I guess you could call it, unique scenario. So let's get into the theories. The first theory that I was actually seeing, the most of, besides the obvious one that I'll go over later, is the fact that these two men were given very large doses of medication, likely painkillers such as morphine or oxycodone, definitely morphine for the broken femur, but they were given high doses of medication. The guy who had surgery done on his abdominal area was obviously put under anesthesia. This could have messed with their state of mind, and they could have completely freaked out and climbed into the ceiling and then died. So, listen to what I'm saying right now. Although people deem this to be the most likely scenario, some people deem this to be the most likely scenario. Think about how ridiculous that sounds. A guy broke his femur. You really expect him to move at all, even if he's on all these painkillers? He is not getting himself into the ceiling. That's just not happening, no matter how many painkillers he's on. So in my opinion, that theory is just completely improbable and not likely at all. What the most likely theory is someone murdered them, and this person that murdered them is likely a hospital employee. You have to think that the settings are extremely similar and the circumstances are extremely similar between the two cases. Both of them took place in a hospital. Both of them ended up dead via unnatural causes. Both of them were found in the ceiling of some random isolated room within the hospital, and both of them were curled up into a fetal position in the ceiling. Those are just too many circumstances to be considered coincidence between these two cases, especially with how unique each case is. You also have to consider, when looking at this theory, who could have actually done it. I did mention how these hospitals are quite a drive away, but they're not too far of a flight. This leads me to believe that it was likely a hospital employee, and a lot of people on Reddit and on these Unexplained Mysteries forums seem to agree with me. It had to have been a hospital employee, some deranged person. And when you consider the fact that flying is likely the mode of transportation between these two hospitals, I would think it's got to be a doctor or some person who's commuting to and from these hospitals, likely some specialized doctor that does operations in which he travels from hospital to hospital. And while I know that sounds a little weird, that's just my personal opinion as to who is most likely. It also could have been a janitor. Maybe he got fired from Stellenbosch, so he transferred over to Mahatma Gandhi and then decided to just murder someone and put him in the ceiling again. Who knows? And finally, the last theory that's honestly, I'd say it's the most interesting, but obviously the least probable, is some sort of paranormal or supernatural explanation. A lot of people think it has to do with some form of teleportation. Maybe these hospitals are haunted, and these guys were in some haunted room where they did something to cause them to get teleported up into the ceiling. Once they're in the ceiling, no one's going to find them. they're probably off so many meds that they can't do anything about it. So they sit there and they starve or get dehydrated and die, basically. While, you know, this is a very out of their theory, it's definitely very interesting, and a lot of people do give some weight to it. But if I were to make a decision, I would 100% say they were murdered. Both of them were murdered, probably by the same person. We just don't know who that person is. And really, the only way to move forward in this case, and I'll add to that, unfortunately, there have been no further developments in both of these cases, but, I would go and look at what workers have been employed or were employed at both of these hospitals, or people that were commuting to and from, like I said with that doctor example. From there, I mean, you just look at who your options are and you do interviews, you question them, you ask them. If you think about someone murdering these two men and stuffing him to the ceiling, it's not going to be an actual driven murder. It's not going to be, oh, I hated this guy, so I killed him. It's going to be some psycho. It's going to be like a psychiatrist who works with mentally ill people, or some doctor who's just absolutely gone insane, or just some person who's mentally insane working in these hospitals. And I would go and question every one of them and see, who's crazy out of all these people, and then try and look into more facts surrounding him. But unfortunately, nothing like that ever happened, and there's been no developments in the case. I guess that wraps it up. I hope you guys enjoyed. This was definitely one of the crazier and weirder mysteries that I've done, but trust me, I've got some good ones in store, and I can't wait to make them. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you later.